relationship. It's such a warm, comforting, I love the word relationship. The first time that I really became aware of the word relationship was when I was about 3 years old. It was Christmas, it was snowing outside. There were 2 big snowmen that were standing guard in front of our house. And people were walking down the street and they were singing carols and there were lights twinkling on the trees and oh, it was such a wonderful feeling. And then suddenly there was a knocking at the door. And my mother said, "Go to the door, darling, and see who it is." And so I went and I opened the door and there he was. It was Santa Claus. Oh, I was so excited. I just didn't want him to go away. And then he just picked me up in his arms, went over and he sat down, put his arms around me and he said, "You've been such a good little girl. I brought you lots of presents." And I remember looking up into his eyes and saying, "You have eyes just like my daddy." He let out a big roar and laughed. You see, I didn't know that my daddy had dressed up like Santa Claus, so I'd have a very special, special Christmas. And you know, from that day for a long, long time, my daddy, Santa Claus, and God were all rolled into one. I had such a special life. You know, I was a kid that grew up with 3 brothers and 2 sisters. We were all raised Catholic. And I went to Catholic school, and it was right next to a cathedral. So instead of eating my lunch, I'd go to the church, and I'd put my overcoat over my head, and I'd walk down the aisle, and oh, I was so sure that everybody who saw me just knew I was a nun. 8 years old and I was a nun. Oh, but how I wanted to be a nun. I had an altar in my bedroom, and every morning I would get up and I would pray. I had the crucifix and I had a statue of the Blessed Virgin Mary. And then I'd go off to communion. I really wanted to be a nun. But when I was in the 3rd grade, I got cast into a play, and that did it. I went to my mother and I said, "Mama, I know what I want to be when I am a big girl. I want to be an actress or a nun." Well, my mother didn't laugh. She was wonderful. She was so patient with me. What a wonderful, fantastic Hungarian mother I had. Well, when I got ready to go to college, I pretty well knew exactly what I wanted to do. I wanted the theater. You know, there's nothing like being on stage. It's like an aphrodisiac. You know, you have the people there. Oh, the smell of the makeup, the light, you say something and then you wait a second and you can hear them hold their breath. And then you say the next word. Oh, it's such a power thing, you can't believe it. Well, I went off to Northwestern and I took theater. When I was in college, I volunteered and I worked with mentally retarded children 2 days a week. I volunteered, went in, and that's so sweet. Have you ever worked with or been around mentally retarded children? They just, oh, they're like little sponges. They can't get enough love. They hold on to, they don't want you to leave. They are so precious. And then their parents would come in. And I would see them deliberately upset the children and say, "See, I can't take those children home. They would be very disruptive in my family. I can't have them." And I got so upset. So I prayed and I said, "Oh God, please, why did you ever create mentally retarded children that nobody seems to want? And God, if you don't tell me why you created them, I'm not going to speak to you anymore." Well, God didn't. So I didn't speak to him. When I was a junior in college, I became engaged to a very wealthy Catholic man, very, very prominent. His mother received the highest award that the Pope gives to anybody. And we were going to have this huge wedding. Once I graduated from college, we were having people from all over the world that were going to come to it. As a matter of fact, I don't know whether you know Bishop Fulton Sheen, but he was going to perform the wedding ceremony. You know, it's really funny how something very insignificant can change your whole life. We'd gone for a walk one day, and I said to him, you know, I really hope that I have 2 boys and then a girl. And he said, you're going to have boys and girls and girls and boys. You're probably going to have 13 children. And I said to him, oh, really? Are you planning on carrying 10 of them? He was furious. Oh, how can you say that? You're not talking about birth control. Certainly I'm talking about birth control. He said, that's a sin. I said, no, it's not. He said, that's a sin. You're going to have to go to the Jesuits and talk to the Jesuits. They'll convince you it's wrong. What you're talking about is absolutely wrong. Okay. So for 3 months, I sat on the front porch of the Jesuits, and they tried to convince me that I was wrong. The Jesuit priest would say it's wrong, and I'd say it's right, and he'd say it's wrong and right and wrong and right. And after 3 months, he finally said, well, that's it. If you don't think it's wrong, it's not wrong. I said, are you saying it's not a sin for me? It's not a sin for you. Well, I had a lot of problem with that. I mean, how can it be a sin for you, but it's not a sin for me? Don't we both worship at the same God? And does he have rules for different people? No, I can't handle that. So I went to my fiance and I said, look, I talked to the priest, and they said it's okay, and that I can go ahead and do it, and it's not a sin for me, but it's a sin for them. And he said, you talked to the Jesuits, the most educated of all of our priests, and you convinced them it wasn't a sin? Yeah. No, it's absolutely a sin. I can have no part of it. And that was that. He dumped me. I mean, boom, boom, that was the end of that engagement. So when I talked to my mother and I told her that I really didn't want to be part of a religion that had a set of rules for 2 people, she was really upset. She was inconsolable. I tell you, she cried. She couldn't. Finally, she called the Bishop of Dallas to make an appointment for me to go see him. So I walked in. Oh, my sister, how can you leave the Mother Church? You whose family have been so involved with the church, how can you leave the Mother Church? And I said, well, Your Excellency, I'll tell you if you'll answer something for me. Do you really believe that Jesus Christ is in that little host that you give us every Sunday? Absolutely, he said. No. I mean, I'm not saying that it's, it represents it. I'm talking about, do you really honestly believe that Jesus Christ is in that host? And he said, without a doubt. I said, well, I'm sorry, then I can't be any part of it. I think you're being a cannibal. And with that, I walked out. I'm sure the poor man must have had a heart attack, but I really couldn't do it. I mean, how could I continue to be part of something that I absolutely, positively did not believe in? So anyhow, I went back. I finished my schooling. I graduated from college, and I went to work in Margot Jones Theater in the Round. And what we were doing is we would do, new plays that haven't been tried out yet, and people didn't know whether or not they want to put any money in it. And we'd, do the plays. It was really interesting. It was, there was a theater in the center, and then you worked around, and yeah, I loved it. It was just great. You were so close to the audience. Well, one night, this man came backstage, and he said, what are you doing here? Why aren't you in New York? And I said, oh, well, I hadn't thought about it. And he said, well, here's my card. My name is Vinton Friedley, and I am a producer. And when you get to be sensible and decide to come to New York, you call me. So I said, okay. So I went home and I told my mother. And my mother, I have to tell you, Hungarian mothers are a lot like Jewish mothers. If you don't move, they'll move for you. The minute I told her what had happened, boom, she went in, she telephoned, made a reservation on a plane, made a reservation at the Barbizon for Women, and packed my suitcases. I mean, she really packed my suitcases. She's the one who put them all together, got me there, put me on the plane, and I was off. I went to New York. God wasn't talking to me, and so I wasn't talking to him. I had no fiance. I found out that my father had clay feet, and I felt lost. I mean, I was so accustomed to, walking down the street and saying, hi, how are ya? And having somebody speak to me. But nobody spoke in New York. They all were very busy. I felt so alone until I started unpacking my suitcase. My mother had written little notes, and she pinned it on different pieces of my clothing. Some saying, I love you very much, you're very special, pray to God he'll take care of you. It was wonderful. It was almost like having her with me. She was such a delight. What a wonderful, wonderful mother I had. So special, so wonderful, and she really gave me courage while I was there. Well, I was there for 2 weeks. I picked up the newspaper one day, and there was an article, and it said that Vinton Friedley was going to produce a new play, and he was auditioning people for it. So I picked up the phone, I called him, and I said, Mr. Friedley, do you remember me? You saw me in Margot Jones Theater in the Round, and you told me to call you. And he said, of course I do, come in. And so I went in. I had an audition, and I got a part in a Broadway play. It wasn't a really big part, but it was a part. And I was on Broadway. I had made it. It was the big time. It's every actress's wish to become a New York actress on Broadway. It was really exciting. You go into the theater, and you had to walk down this alley to get there. People would stand along the side and they yell for your autograph, yell for your autograph. And in those days, I used to look a lot like Grace Kelly. She was, remember the actress? She's the one that went to Monaco and she married the prince there. And they'd say, oh, Miss Kelly, may I have your autograph? And I'd say, I'm sorry, honey, I'm not Miss Kelly. No, Miss Kelly, Miss. Finally, I gave up. I'd sung Grace Kelly. Oh, they were so happy, and they would leave. It was fun. It didn't cost anything, and it was great with them. But oh, I was having such a good time. I had a wonderful time. I was going to parties. I was meeting important people. I was doing all of these exciting things. But I had such a hole inside of me. It was like, no matter how many parties I went to, no matter how many men I knew, biblically speaking, no matter what I did, it was like pouring water into a glass that had a hole in the bottom of it. Nothing caught, nothing held on. I didn't know what to do. Oh, I was busy, I did a lot of television. I worked with a man named Gaylord Hauser. Those of you who are into health will know or remember Gaylord Hauser. He was one of the pioneers in health food. He was a wonderful man. We did a series on television for ABC, and it was great. I learned so much. And it was such a blessing because, later on in my life, there really were things that I could use that Gaylord Hauser taught me. And in those days, we did live television. That meant what you saw was what everybody else saw. And we were doing a thing, and I'll never forget. It was supposed to be a seance, and so the camera went black, and they heard this voice say, oh, your uncle is here. And then the lights went on, and this monkey was sitting on my lap. Well, he was a very affectionate monkey, and he well, shall I say that he was causing me a great deal of pain. But because it was live television, I had to go ahead and, and pretend it was just part of the thing. It was great. I love those days. As a matter of fact, talking about television, when I got my own television shows, I had a man come on one time, and he was an artist. I hadn't had time to talk to him before he got on the show. And the minute that the red light went on, he froze. It was like he wasn't even breathing. And I looked at him, and I looked at this art that he had brought, and it was, bluegrass and green skies. So for 45 minutes, I talked about how exciting it is to paint bluegrass. Isn't that wonderful? That reminds me of a song. And oh yes, and green sky. 45 minutes of this, and finally, when the lights went off, he came alive. Those were great days. I loved them. It was so much fun. I really, really enjoyed live television. But I wasn't satisfied. I don't know whether you've ever been to the point where it's like nothing satisfies you. You can eat a full meal and you still don't feel satisfied. That's the way I felt inside. And I thought, well, maybe if I get married, that will change me. That will fill me. That will make me whole. That will make me happy, really happy. And I had this wonderful man. He was a European, elegant, debonair, great friend. And that's what we were. We were friends. But he kept asking me to marry him. And I thought, well, if I marry him, maybe then I'll feel full. So we got married. And he took me every place. I mean, we traveled all over the world. I met all of these important people, first name, kings, queens, men in industry, all of the people that you read about on the front page. We had parties, we traveled, we did all of these. It's great. I loved it. I learned so much, and it was exciting. But it didn't fill the hole. And my husband was so good to me. I mean, he gave me everything that you could possibly ask for, every material thing. I had jewelry, I had boats, I had a car, we had several homes, we had everything. I had clothes galore, everything I wanted. And yet I had this awful, awful hole. To the world, I was this wonderful, happy, young socialite, this rich woman who has everything. Let me assure you, material things don't mean anything. You can have everything in the world and really have nothing. Don't kid yourself by saying, oh, well, if I only had money, it would. That's really not where it is. Really isn't where it is at all. And one day I sat on the windowsill of our 19th floor condominium, and I looked down and I thought, if I just jump, it won't hurt anymore. And that's when the Holy Spirit must have pulled me back and say, you stupid girl, you don't have to live this life. Make up your mind, what do you want? And I thought, that's right. I don't have to live this life. So I went to my husband and I said, I want a divorce. Oh, my poor husband, what do you want? What can I give you? Oh, angel face, what do you need? Please tell me, what can I do? And I said, you can't do anything. I just want a divorce. We probably had the greatest divorce anybody ever had. We used the same attorney. We didn't have any arguments. The only thing we argued about was the fact that he wanted to give me things which I didn't want. I didn't want any more things. I wanted to find this hole, why I had it. No matter what he had given me, he couldn't have helped me. I understand now, if I had it to do over again, I probably could have done something differently. But at that point, I didn't understand about the God hole. There's a very famous French mathematician, and his name is Blaise Pascal. And Blaise Pascal wrote that each of us has a God hole inside, and that nothing that man creates can fill it, only God. I wish I'd known that then. I sure would have stopped making a lot of the mistakes that I did, but I didn't know it. I had just taken my first step towards understanding how do you get over the God hole. And once I had the divorce, I had to decide what to do with my life. We'd only been married 3 years. I didn't want alimony. I didn't want any of the things that he had given me. I mean, they were no longer part of my life. I didn't want to go back into the theater. But you know, he had given me so much jewelry. And I loved it. I loved jewelry. And I wore it just like I wear a watch. I had it on all the time. And I thought, I will go into the jewelry business. So I went to a friend of mine who was in the jewelry business, and I said, could you help me find a jewelry business that I could buy? And he said, you've never been in the jewelry business. And I said, no. And he said, well, why don't you come and learn the business from me on my dime? And I thought, that sounds like a good idea. So that's what I did. I started and I learned all about jewelry. He had, it was called a high-end men's jewelry business. He designed cufflinks. They were sold all over the world, and, you know, very expensive ones. And it was great. I loved it, you know. It was so much fun. It was like I was taking part of my creativity of being an actress, and all of a sudden, you know, I was learning and I was designing, and I did a thing with him. We had a spa, an event. That's the word. It was an event that we did at one of the major hotels, and it was called "A Woman's Best Accessory is a Well-Dressed Man." That wouldn't do very well today in the, you know, PC world that we live in if it's not politically correct. We can't accept it. Anyhow, it was great. And within a year, I was made vice president of his jewelry company. Well, I got written up in Gentleman's Quarterly, the New York Times. I was going all over because suddenly I had broken through the glass ceiling. I had become an executive in the men's field. Never had happened before. It was great. Here I had all this adulation. I had all these people doing all of these things. And I had a hole. That hole, that constant hole. It was like nothing filled it. Here I had success, I had all of this power, I had everything, and I had nothing. And I was talking to my mother one day on the telephone, and she said, in her wonderful, intuitive way, "Darling, why don't you come spend a little time with me?" And I said, "Okay." She said, "You know, come for a week or two." And I said, "Okay." So a week or two became a month, and a month became 3 months, and I was there until one day I got a call to go back to New York, to go to Carnegie Hall to narrate an opera, a Japanese opera. It was terrific. I went back. You realize that I had left everything. When I left New York, I had clothes in the closet, I had food in the refrigerator. The only thing I had left was the key to the apartment, which I used to give to everybody who went there. And when I went back, I thought, I really don't need this. I really don't want to be in New York anymore. And as I used to remember, when I lived in New York, I used to go to all the operas that I could. I loved it. I'd sit in the darkness and I'd look and I'd think, oh, wouldn't it be wonderful if I could sing and act at the same time? Of course, I have a horrible voice, I have to tell you. But oh, that would be so wonderful. And the conductor would bow to me and I would bow to him, and then we would both leave the stage. Oh, how exciting that would be. Well, you know, if you are patient, God will answer your prayers. When I was in New York and I did that show at Carnegie Hall, that's exactly what happened. The conductor bowed, and I bowed, and we walked off the stage. It was so exciting. I was so thrilled. But that didn't fill the hole. One day I was talking to a friend of mine, and I said, you know, I just can't understand it. I've had success in the theater, had my dream come true. I was on Broadway. I've had a husband who absolutely adored me, who gave me everything material. I've had success in business. Why am I still so unhappy? You know, I just don't understand it. When I was young, I used to have this great relationship with God, and then, you know, then I told her the thing about, you know, the children, the ones that God had created that nobody wanted, and she said, "Well, God didn't do that." And I said, "No. I'm talking about these little mentally retarded children that God created." And she said, "God did not create those mentally retarded children. Those children are mentally retarded because that is karma." It's what? It's karma. They are living through their karma. Well, what's karma? Karma means that if you do something bad in a past life, you have to pay for it in the next life. Oh, so you mean God didn't do that? Of course not. Oh, that's terrific. Well, that really made me feel happy. Oh, to think that, you know, it wasn't God. I didn't have to be mad at God anymore. And it was the children's fault. And I said, well, tell me more about this. So then she started telling me about reincarnation. And I got so busy, I started reading everything that I could. I read everything that I could by Helena Blavatsky, you know, one of the big people in New Age. She's the one who could manifest things out of air. And then I read Alice Bailey, and I read everything that Spalding had written, all 6 volumes about the masters of the Far East. I mean, I read everything that I could. Still had the hole. Still had the hole. One day, a friend of mine called me, and she said, "Liz, I just saw the most amazing man. Would you believe he can change water into wine? I saw him perform miracles." "You're kidding. You saw somebody come in. Oh, that must be exactly what's happening. Maybe that's where, oh God, finally, you're leading me. Finally, I can find answers now." So I went running off to meet Keith Reinhardt. Keith Reinhardt had a church that he called the Aquarian Foundation. So I immediately became part of the Aquarian Foundation. He did fantastic things. He had stones that came popping out of his eyes. You know how when you have an eyelash in your eye, how it scratches? I saw stones that big come out of his eyes. One of them came with such force it hit me in the face. I saw his chest open up and a stone that big come out. And that afternoon, there wasn't a mark on him. I saw ectoplasm. Ectoplasm, it's like a gauze, you know, and it came out of his mouth and it went down, and then all of a sudden, it formed a man. And this man was one of our masters. Now, in New Age, we were taught that masters were those who have lived very, very good lives, and many of them thousands and thousands of years old, and they come back to each of us because each of us has a master. And these masters brought messages, and they brought messages to all of us, and they gave us all names. They called me Starbright because the master said that I was one of the brightest stars in the universe. How's that for checking up the old ego? I'll tell you, New Age is very much on the ego. It really is pumping you up all of the time. And then they told me that, yes, Jesus was one of the masters who sits at the head of the table when they all gather together, but that Jesus came to show us how to become gods. And what you do is, Jesus came as a man. When he was baptized, he recognized his divinity, and then he became God. And if you recognize your divinity, you too can become God. Sounds like I'm making all this up and it's some kind of woo-woo stuff. Believe me, they're doing it today. You see that in so many places where they are talking about becoming God. There's a whole thing with spiritual formation where you go into the silence and you become God. This is what we were taught in New Age. We were taught automatic writing, where you take a pen and you sit down with a piece of paper and completely empty your mind. And when you empty your mind and think of absolutely nothing, the pen will start to move, or the thought will come to your mind and then you write it out. Automatic writing. This Alice Bailey that I told you that I read so much of, her things came through a Master Dolwig, and he gave her 23 books. It's interesting, you know, she lived about the same time as Ellen White. Ellen White's messages came from God, and Alice Bailey's came from Dolwig, the master. Alice Bailey wrote what's called the 10-point plan. Go on your computer, Google Alice Bailey 10-point plan, and see what she wrote in the 1930s. Things that we are seeing today that are happening, what they're doing to our children, how we see all of this stuff on television, how all of these things are happening where the children don't have the respect for one another, how sex is so rampant and it's something that she said everybody should enjoy, and how marriage is not all that important. Read it. 10-point plan by Alice Bailey. You won't believe it. I really want you to see it. You know, Alice Bailey and her husband had offices in the United Nations, and they had it so that they could do their publishing there. They had a publishing company, and it was called the Lucifer Press. That's until they got very upset and decided to call it instead the Lucius Press. But they still printed all of her things, all of her books. It was all there. Alice Bailey is someone who said, don't worry about trying to come from the outside and influence people. Go to the inside of the church. That's where it's going to happen. Work inside, and then we will destroy it. And that's what we're seeing happening, unfortunately. Well, I was up to my ears in New Age. I mean, I was doing everything. I was doing hands-on healing. People were coming to me with broken backs or cancer, and I put my hand on it, and, you know, it would be healed. I always prayed to Jesus, but unfortunately, I don't think I was being used by the Lord. I used to do channeling, you know, come and I'll tell you, oh, do you know your Uncle Jim is going to die? You need to go home and see him. And you know, the strange part of it was that they did have an Uncle Jim, and he did die. I mean, it was awful, all of these things. But Satan was using me, and I didn't know it. I really, really thought that I was searching for the Lord and I would find him. The Holy Spirit has a way of really working things out. One day, I had a call from the man who was this Keith Reinhardt, the one I told you about that had this religion. And he said, I've been to the doctor, he tells me he's dying, and I want you to head my church. And when he said that to me, it was like, remember when I told you I got out of the Catholic Church? That when they said that they really did believe that Jesus Christ was in the host? I said, no, I can't do that. I don't want any part of that. And I still have that hole. With all of this studying and religion and things that I thought I was doing, going to meetings on Wednesday nights at 5 o'clock and getting home at 11, and on Saturday we would be there, and on Sunday we were there. My whole life was involved with it, but suddenly I realized I wasn't happy at all. So I decided to go back to my roots. I went back to my family when they were living in Sacramento at the time. And my mother, my Hungarian mother, who, God love her, but she was fantastic, this woman. She said to me, they're looking for a woman to do a television show. I want you to go down to KCRA and I want you to talk to them about doing their television show. And I said, what kind of a television show? And she said, it's an interview show. You'll be perfect for it. I said, okay, Mama. So off I went, and sure enough, I got the job. And it was great. I mean, I was getting wonderful ratings. And people thought that I was so fantastic. I was getting all of these letters from people, and women were calling me and saying, oh, my marriage is so much better because of you, and I copy your hairstyle, and I love your clothes. And I kept listening to all of this, and my ratings were going up, 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 up. Well, one day, these people came in and said, we'd like for you to be the head marshal at the parade for the Gold Nugget parade in Paradise. And I said, well, I would love to do it, but I'm really not sure that I can. If I can, I would be delighted to do it. I didn't have any idea or there was no way I was going to go to Paradise to ride in their stupid parade. No, I had a weekend planned. I was going to go to San Francisco. I had a date with this man, and we were going to a party on Friday night. There was a big hoo-ha on a Saturday. Saturday night we were going to the theater, and Friday there was Sunday there was a brunch. I mean, I'm going to give this up to go ride on a horse? I don't think so. Then I got to thinking about it, I'm really nothing without my people. I really owe it to my people to go and do this show for them. So I got all dressed up. I called my boyfriend and I said, I can't go. My public wants me to come and be the grand marshal of their parade. And he said, great, I'll go with you. And I went, oh, wonderful. Now he'll know how really important I am and how much people love me and how great this is going to be. So he came, and I was all dressed up in my red cowboy outfit, my red cowboy boots, my red cowboy hat. And my false eyelashes, my hair pulled up. I was a sight. And I arrived in Paradise. And nobody recognized me. And I'd say, how you doing? How are you? Fine. Glad to see you, brother. Yeah? Nobody paid any attention to me. I was so humiliated. I thought, oh, here, I told him to come because, I wanted him to see what a big deal I am, and nobody cares a darn about me. I saw a lady, and she was dusting off a bench, and I thought, okay. And I said, well, why don't we just sit and watch the parade? Of course, I hadn't told anybody that I was coming, and yet I expected everybody to fall down because I was there. But nobody cared at all. So we started to sit down, and I was about that far from getting on the bench, and this lady came running over, and she said, no, that's for very important people. And I suddenly realized I wasn't so very important. They wouldn't even let me sit on their bench. And that was one of the best things that ever happened to me, because I realized, we think we're so important. We think we know so much. We think that our talents are ours. When I was an actress, I thought, oh, I'm so good because of me. No, it never was. It was always God. It was always His gift to me. And if the people loved me, maybe they were seeing God through me. But with the ego that I had, I seriously doubt it. Anyway, I got a call one day from California legislature, and they said, we would like for you to be director of radio and television for the both houses of the legislature. And I said, sure. I mean, great. That's wonderful. I mean, to work for the legislature and to be the director of radio and television. And what it meant was that I was going to go and I was going to tell legislators how to present bills. I was going to tell their wives how to dress and look adoringly at them when they spoke and said their little spiels. And I told them how to present their radio and television interviews. I mean, it was fabulous. And I was learning all of their secrets because they trusted me so much. They were telling me everything. You would have thought that would have done it. You would have thought that at last that hole would have been filled. But it wasn't. I still had that empty hunger inside, that need, that, oh, if you've never had it, you have no idea what it means. Anyway, there was a legislator, a senator, who was at the Capitol. I used to watch him. 3 years I watched him. As a matter of fact, we'd drive in many times to the Capitol, his car next to mine. He'd park, I'd park next to him. He never looked at me, never spoke to me, never saw me. But oh, did I like him. He was one legislator that I knew was so honest, so honorable, so gentle. Many times it was like a squawk box that I had in my office, you know, and I could turn it on to different ones, different committee meetings. And if I knew he was doing one that was particularly important, I'd call up all of my people and I'd say, I'm sorry, I cannot take you. My book is full, all the appointments are gone. We'll have to do it on another day. So I could sit and listen to him. And I would hear him, and people would come before him and they'd present their bills. And then he would say, well, is there something more that you would like to say? And he was so gentle, so understanding, so sweet. I mean, I just loved to hear his voice. He was so great. If I'd been a teenager, I would have had a picture of him in my bedroom. I mean, he was fabulous. Well, one day he came into my office. He came in with another legislator. I was so nervous. I went to shake hands with him, and did you ever shake hands with somebody and your hands were all wet? Mine were dripping. Oh dear, here I was with this man that I respected so much with my wet hands, and I didn't know what to do, so I sat down. Anyway, he finished with the a meeting that we had, and he left, and the other legislators, the other senator, his secretary called me and she said, Senator would like for you to come to a party he's giving. Well, I had to be real careful because, as I told you, legislators, you know, gave me so many secrets, and I mean, you don't want to mix things together, so I never went to any of their parties. So I said, I'm really sorry, but you know, that's not possible. She called me 3 times, and finally I said, okay, I will be there. I had a date that night, and I called my date, and I said, listen, I've got to go do this thing. I'll go swim a couple of laps and have a drink or two, and you know, I'll call you, and then we'll go out. So I got there, and it was really hot in Sacramento, and I got my swimming suit, and I swam a couple of laps, and I got to the end of the pool, and I heard somebody say, may I offer you a towel? And I looked up, and it was him. And I thought, oh, why did I get in the pool? Oh, and I've got this bathing suit on, and I'm so fat, and oh dear. Anyway, he gave me the towel, and we sat down, and we talked for 2 hours. 2 hours. We talked until 2 in the morning. We talked till. He was wonderful. Oh, I was just so thrilled. And I came home and I said to my mother, oh, I met the man I want to marry, Senator Dolwig. And she said, Senator Dolwig? He's older than your father. I said, yes, but he's Hungarian. Anyway, Senator Dolwig and I became good friends. And in a couple of years, he asked me to marry him. I married the man of my dreams. Oh, you know, there's that thing they say, oh, then they got married and lived happily ever after. Now, that's just the beginning. He got so sweet. He got so much better. It was so wonderful. I absolutely adored this man. But I still had the hole. I was beginning to think, well, maybe everybody has it. They just don't talk about it. Anyway, I got cancer, had colon cancer. The doctor said, you're going to have chemo, radiation, and we're going to have to do some surgery. And I said, well, doctor, I don't think so. Let me think about it. And I thought, I'm not going to do, cut and burn. No way. God's going to heal me. That's what's going to happen. And I started in. I did everything that I could think of that was natural. If somebody said, I've got something natural, it's going to heal cancer, boom, I bought it. My bathroom looked like it was a pharmacy. I had so many bottles of everything that I tried. I drank so much carrot juice, my skin turned orange. I mean, I was convinced that God was going to cure me. And I was going every single month to the doctor, and every single month the doctor was saying, you have got to have chemotherapy. And I keep saying, oh, doctor, I'm sorry, can't we just talk? We'll talk about it next month. And finally I went in, and he said, well, that's it. He said, you either take chemotherapy or don't come back. It has now spread. You are without a doubt the worst patient I have ever had. And I went, oh, God, you didn't cure me. And my cancer spread. You betrayed me. God, how could you have done this to me? So I looked at the doctor and I said, we'll start chemotherapy next month. I can't do it right now. So I went home. I got down on my knees and I said, God, I am so sorry. I know that I am a prideful person. I think I know so much. I think I know better than the doctors. Please, God, tell me what you want me to do. I'll do anything you ask me to do. I'll take arsenic if you want me to, but please, God, tell me in a loud voice. You know how thick-headed I am. Please, God, listen to me. Tell me what to do. The next day, I got a telephone call from a friend of mine who was in the health food business. And he said, how you doing? And I said, not very good. I said, I talked to the doctor yesterday. He said, I've got to have chemo. And he said, it's so interesting. Yesterday afternoon, a man came into my office and said he had a cure for cancer. A cure for cancer? And he said, yeah, he brought me this bottle, said he had a cure for cancer. I said, oh, please send it to me. And he said, no. He said he had a cure for cancer. Nobody's ever tried this. I said, I don't care. I'll try it. And he said, no, honey, you're not going to try it. He said, it could kill you. I said, so could arsenic. And I already told God I'd take that. So please send it to me. And after much begging back and forth, he said, all right, I will send it to you, but you must only take 1 drop in 2 ounces of water every 2 hours. Right? No. Right. Oh, right. Of course I will. Well, I'm Hungarian. And if 1 drop is good, 10 drops is better. I was going by that bottle and I was taking it by the tablespoon. Every time I walked by, I took some of that. I finished this whole bottle in 28 days. I went back to the doctor and he said, all right, ready to start the chemo. And he goes out and he did some tests and he came back and he looked real funny. And I said, what's the matter? And he said, make an appointment with my secretary. I'll see you in 6 months. And I said, are you telling me that I'm cured? And he said, I did not say that. I simply said that it appears to have gone into remission. Oh, thank you, doctor. Thank you. Oh, God. Oh, this is wonderful. I called my friend and I said, listen, we've got to take this thing out. We've got to share this with people. Oh, my gosh, do you understand? We could cure people with this. He said, wait a minute. Are you crazy? He said, you can't just go tell people you've got a cure for cancer. He said, you have to go through the FDA, you have to go through all this testing, you have to do blind testing, you have to do, no, he said, it costs $1 million, we cannot do that. I said, but you've got to be able to do something. It cured me, it's got to be able to cure other people. He said, oh, there's no way. Oh, before I forget, let me tell you, you know that medicine that cured me? Would you believe after I took it for 11 months, the man who developed it dropped dead. He never left the formula. He never told anybody what was in it. There was no way anybody could have it. I had a little bit left. I sent it to laboratories here to see if they could break down the formula. It didn't. I sent it to Japan, which is supposed to be very good. They couldn't break the formula down. It was almost as if the Holy Spirit had given me a gift. And that was that little bottle that cured my cancer. I went to my husband and I said, what can we do? This obviously has cured me. I want to tell other people about it. I want them to have it. What can I do? And he said, my husband was also an attorney, and he said, you can tell them what happened to you, but you cannot make any claims at all. I said, okay, great. So I called my friend and I said, listen, I tell you what we're going to do. We're going to go to all of the health food stores and we're going to tell people what it did for me. And if they want to get it, then they can have it, and that way we can share it. Right? Right. Oh, it was wonderful. We were so excited. Except he was an Adventist. Have you ever been around an Adventist who all they ever talk about is what you can do, what you cannot do, what you should do, what you should not do? I listened to him for 11 months. My tongue was sore from biting it because I didn't tell him what I thought about him and his Adventist church. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. And I said to him, listen, I'll make a deal with you. I'll go to that church of yours once. If I don't like it, I don't want you ever to mention Adventism to me again. Right? Right. Deal? Deal. I'll pick you up on Sabbath for Sabbath school. You'll do what? I'll pick you up on Sabbath for Sabbath school. We're going to go to a Sabbath school? Right. I used to go to catechism when I was a kid, but this is a grown-up man, a big man, and he's talking about we're going to go to Sabbath school? So I said, okay, we'll go to Sabbath school. So Saturday came, and I was all dressed up in my Sunday best, and off we went to Sabbath school, which was a disaster. I mean, a total disaster. Have you ever been in a Sabbath school where there was one person who has all of the answers? She was in that Sabbath school. I said, okay, it was over finally. And I said, I'm off. And I said, I did what I said I'd do. I came to your church and I don't want to hear anything more about Adventism. And we were walking out and the head elder came and took him by the arm, walked him into the church down the center aisle, and his wife took me down the side aisle. We were separated by a whole pew. I thought, oh, how did I get involved in this? Oh, God, you got to get me through this. Then they started, and they got up and they read the entire bulletin. And I went, oh, I knew these Adventists were stupid, but I didn't know they were illiterate, too. They can't even read. Then a man got up and attacked the violin. I don't think he ever had a violin lesson. It was awful. It was, you know how it sounds when cats go down when you scratch down a blackboard, and it was awful. And I'm thinking, I am a professional. I am a professional for 13 years. Since I was 13 years old, I have been a professional, and I have to endure this kind of treatment. And then the pastor said, and now we're going to have a word of thanksgiving, because God has blessed us. Let us all stand and give thanks to God. And those of you who have a special praise, please let me hear from you. The woman from Sabbath school, you know, the one who knew everything, jumps up. Oh, she starts crying. Oh, my boyfriend beat me up. My kids are in jail. I'm going to get evicted. And I'm going, that's it. These people are nuts. They need a psychiatrist. That's what they need. I want to get out, and I'm trying to get his attention so I can get out of this crazy place. And that's when the pastor started to preach. I have never heard anyone preach in the Spirit. This man, oh, he touched my heart. I have no idea what he said. To this day, I will meet him, and he said, I will remember you sitting there in the second row, black mascara running down your face as you cried through my sermon. But I have no idea what he said. I can only tell you that it was the first time in so many, many years that I began to feel. I could feel the hole beginning to fill up. I couldn't wait to get home. I told my husband, oh, you got to go. Listen, I want to tell you this Adventist church is not all that bad. We've got to go try. We've got to go study it. So we did. We studied for a year. Then we got baptized. And I thank God that I came into the Adventist church for so many reasons. But if for only one, that I truly learned that death is merely sleeping. My beloved husband had so many strokes. And after being in a convalescent home and then in the hospital for many years, the day that I was with him, he opened his eyes and he said, I want to go. And I was able to say, I want you to go. To think he would never again have another stroke, never again have any pain, never again be subjected to staying in a bed. To have my husband healthy again, I released him with joy. And that night, he died. I spent the next couple of weeks walking up and down the hall in my home that I had shared with him that now became a tomb. I couldn't stand the pain anymore of separation. Oh, I was glad that he was gone, but I was so alone. And as I was walking down the hall, I said, oh God, I'm so alone. I can't live without him anymore. I heard this voice say, alone? You have been given so much and forgiven so much. Go and share it with others. God, I really do hear you in my heart. You really are speaking to me. Oh, Lord. Oh, yes, God, I will. I'll go. I will. I'll share it with people. I'll tell them what you have done and how much you have forgiven me. Oh, God, I am so happy. I started to do mission trips, and I was in Ghana, and when I was in Ghana, I was staying at the Adventist University there, and they kind of rent you out of half a room, so you don't know who you're going to get as a roommate. Oh, the one I got really was a dilly. She was over the top. Oh, am I supposed to take a bath in this bucket? And there are no top sheets, and where is the air conditioning? And the towels are only this big, and on and on and on. Oh, madam, why didn't you just go to a Hilton hotel in the States? When you come on a campaign, you do with what they give you. Finally, I couldn't stand it at 11 o'clock at night, and I'm not a walker. I said, I'm going for a walk. And I went out on the campus, and I saw there was a light on in the auditorium. So I walked over, and I went in. And there, sitting at one of the tables, was this very attractive lady with her husband. And I walked over, and I said, hi, I'm Liz Dolwig. Where are you from? And she said, I'm from California. I said, me too. And she said, where are you from? And I said, Sacramento. And she said, well, I'm from Yountville. 70 miles apart. We went halfway around the world to meet each other. God gave me that little sliver of opportunity to meet a woman who was going to be such a big part of my life. That Peach, the next day, she and her husband, they went down country to do their campaigns. I went up country. We had exchanged phone calls, so we called one another back and forth. And so about a year later, she called me and she said, I understand you're going to Africa. And I said, well, actually, I am going to Africa. There are 1,000 women there that want me to teach them how to preach, but I'm going to go to India first. Oh, great, she said, I'd love to go with you. Oh, you see, I have never had any girlfriends. My mother used to say I was the only woman that she knew that was going to end up with all groomsmen because I had no bridesmaids. And now this woman is asking me to go on a trip with me for 3 months. Oh, Holy Spirit, you really got to handle this one. I can't handle this. So I said, oh, sure, fine. Oh, yeah, I'd love for you to come. Well, the year before, when I was doing campaigns in India, a man came up to me and he said, I was born Hindu. He said, I tried to read your Bible, but I never could. And then he said, one day I saw this paper with this funny-looking white woman on it, and I thought I'd come one time to hear you. And he said, I have been here every single night. He said, I'm going to get baptized. He said, now I understand the Bible, and my wife's going to get baptized, my little boy's going to get baptized. This man was so filled with the Holy Spirit. I had never really seen the Holy Spirit so prominent in another person's life. He said, I don't want anything to do with Hinduism. He said, give me a Christian name. So I said, okay, I'll name you Daniel. So that night I went up before I started. I had a couple thousand people there. I said, you know, I would have come across the world to meet and be with any one of you. But I said, when you see the Holy Spirit working in the life of one person, I would have walked here if possible. I was so excited. Well, when Peach had said she wanted to go with me to India, you know, now that her husband was dead, she was free to do it. I said, oh, great, well, wait till you meet Daniel. There's not going to be one Hindu left in Chennai. He's going to have converted them all. This man is on fire for the Lord. Wait till you meet him. So we started the meeting, and Daniel didn't come, and Daniel didn't call, and Daniel didn't come. He didn't do anything. I had nothing, no communication at all. So finally I said to the pastor, why isn't Daniel coming to the meetings? And he said, well, you know, Daniel smoked. And I told Daniel, don't come back until you stop smoking. I was furious. I could not believe it. I left there and I said to Peach, that's it. That is it. I am not going to Africa. I am not going to teach women how to preach. If those in our church do not understand love and understanding and reaching, we are to help one another. There's not one person in that church who is not a sinner. And they're turning this man away because he was smoking? I used to smoke 5 packs of cigarettes a day, and I know how difficult it is to get rid of it. They didn't want him. And I said, we've got to do something. The people are not converted. So that's what we did. We sat down and we worked on just 4 members to convert them so that no longer would they know about Jesus Christ, but that they would know him. I started doing those. I said, please don't bring anybody here. Just come. I worked with the pastors. You have no idea the problems pastors have. I mean, we expect them to be perfect, and they're not. We expect them to jump when we want something that they don't have. They have a life of their own. They have a family of their own, and we have got to be sympathetic with that. And then Peach used to work with the youth pastors and the teachers and those who needed to know how to reach out in love, not pointing fingers, but out of in love. We have been doing those all over. Little by little, I have begun to see things that are coming into our church, things that have upset me greatly, but things that I see because of my background in New Age. Most of you probably are not aware of it. You don't understand the terminology. You cannot see it because the Satan is so clever. He just puts 1 drop of arsenic into something and presents it to you as a wonderful, delicious, delightful new thought. I have written a book. It's called 3 Drops of Arsenic, which goes into that. I am hoping that people will open their eyes Do not buy into New Age thinking. Do not buy into what people tell you is a new way to pray. Go to the Bible. Test everything against the Bible. There is the only way that you will know whether or not something is true. Had I known that, had I tested what I saw with my eyes against what I read in the Bible, I would not have made the mistakes that I made. And I don't want you to make the same mistakes. Please hold on to your Bible. Hold on to our doctrine. Love one another, and above all, have a relationship with Jesus Christ.